Hello.
Yes, sir,
Yes,
you
sir.
are audible.
Now I am audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Okay.
Vivek sir, shall we start?
We will start now.
Okay. Session will be leading by Dr. Tare, senior head in land use, remote sensing and application cost.
Bulbul, your voice is echoing. There's echo.
Uh, no, but I've joined from the laptop only. There's no other device has joined from my side. It, shall I leave and again join?
Now it is better. Just once.
If it is still a problem, so we can continue here.
No, it is fine. You can continue. It is better. It is better now.
Okay. So Dr. Vivek Katare is a senior scientist at an MP Cost in Land Use and Urban Survey Division and Remote Sensing Application. His academic qualification, PhD from MS University of Baroda, 1 year PG Diploma in Human Settlement Analysis, and from Indian Institute of Remote Sensing. And he has conducted 30 he has joined 32 weeks of course in land use planning and terrain evaluation in Indian Institute of Technology, Mumbai. He is postgraduated from IVV University, Jabalpur in 1985. The professional training, he has a professional training in ARC Info Software, ESRI, digital image processing from regional remote sensing, and Xenix and the related software from National Informatics Center, NIC. He has professional experience of 32 years of administrative managerial in research development, planning and implementation, academic teaching, consultancy experience at MP Cost, uh, that is MP Council of Science and Technology, Government of
Can't
MP.
share it on the screen.
He has research experience of 32 years in execution of research projects in the field of land use planning, urban planning, and regional planning. He has 15 research. Yes, sir. He has published 15 research papers and has done research projects, 25 research projects, with private and yeah, he has been awarded uh, outstanding contribution recognition by the government general MP Cost for an RIS project. He has done he has a technical been awarded as a technical expert nominated by MOUD, Government of India for Amrut. He has been awarded also National Geographical State Award in 2012. So we have the opportunity to learn from this eminent scientist from MP Cost. Sir, I hope you will good and valuable uh, first session of 10th December. Sir, we can continue.
Can I continue, madam? Hello.
Yes, sir, we can continue. Sir, am I audible?
Oh, my screen. I have shared my screen, so it is visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I welcome you all for this AICTE training and learning program under faculty development program, and on remote sensing and GIS application in spatial planning and development. Basically, I am working since 1932 when there is no computer systems from even in 1985 to 1990, and when then 482 and other systems were came. So before that, the scenario of developing a land use model or developing a suitability model is entirely different. So at that time, normally we go for the manual kind of a suitability model, but now it is based on very sophisticated softwares like ArcGIS, Radars, and Geomatica and all. So today my lecture is basically on land suitability technique through remote sensing and GIS. So most of the normally what we call the application for suitability and land capability, I'll just come up on the what is land capability. So land capability classification is defined basically a system of grouping land to various classes. Now this grouping is based on inherent limitation and its uses on a sustained environment when we talked about soil attribute, topography, drainage, and climate. So land capability basically there's a USDA classification also which define there are 8 kinds of land capability classes. These land capability classes assigned from class 1 to class 8. Now the class which is defined into a different capability class based on the limitation for the certain kind of a land capability class. So the capability class falls into basically 2 groups. One is suited for cultivation and another which is not suited for cultivation. And then there is subclasses also. So there is a basically a long classification depends on the inherent capability of soil attribute, topography, drainage, and the terrain conditions. Now these terrain conditions basically depends on how the land is capable on a certain type of use. So then we talked about erosion class. Erosion class may be moderate, maybe medium, or maybe severe. So when you go for the continue these classes into further subclasses, you can add certain attributes into the land capabilities. So land number 1, land suitable for agriculture, other use, which includes class 1 to class 4. So class 1 basically the land which do not have capability limitations. It can be used for various purpose. It has either very low kind of a limitations. Land which is not suitable for agriculture but very suited for forestry, grasslands, and wildlife, which includes class 4 to class 8. So this is the basic 2 classes where the limitation being divided into agriculturable land and non-agriculturable land. Now land suitable for cultivation. The class 1, which is basically nearly level lands and lands which almost no limitation, which I have already told, or very slightly hazards. Soil in classes are suited for variety of crops including wheat, cottons, sugar canes, and all kinds of soya beans and etc. So basically these are the good cultivable agriculture croplands, and intensive croppings were going on these capability class 1 lands. So when we go for the class 2, it's a good cultivable land, but there is a certain limitation of sloping. The slope factors comes into the picture where the slope is more than 3% slope, and the soil depth is also a little bit moderate. It is less than 30 centimeters. So when these soils were used under various conditions, because they have certain limitations under use for drainage, under use for drain system, because there is a less there are some certain percentage of clay in these kind of soils, and these are basically used when you cannot go for a certain class of a crop cultivation. Then you have to rotate the crop in these kinds of land. And water control systems also special tillage practices to be controlled the erosion. So certainly when there is a slope is slightly higher, the erosion come into picture, and you have to control certain conservation measures to conserve the soils. The class 3 is slightly moderate fertility or moderate steep slopes, which is more than 3%, because up to less than 15%, these four classes basically works. Now you can see the plains of Uttar Pradesh, the plains of which we called in geomorphology paddy plains. The paddy plains is basically are very gentle sloping areas where the percentage of slope is 1 to 3%. So they are the mostly you will see the land capability class 1, 2, and when the percentage is more, it comes under the class 3 and 4. So it has a severe limitations, severe erosions, and severe risk of damage, but can be used for crop provided adequate planting cover is maintained. So under these sloping areas, the plowing is quietly different. It is not a straight plowing; it is a plowing in a circular area, so that whatever soil eroded, it will be settled in the next stage of slope. So this is the area where class 3 and class 4 lands, which are basically croplands, will be used for cultivations. Now the class 5, 6, 7 and 8, these are the areas which are not suitable for permanent agriculture, or basically you will find that these slopes were normally covered by shrubs, dense vegetation or forest. So class 5 land, which is too wet or stony, where there is no soil cover, or soil cover is very thin, or there is underlying rock is sheet rocks, so you will not go for the cultivation in these areas. So even though the erosion is slight because the underlying rock is sheet rock, it is properly managed with certain soil conservation measures, and pastures and grasslands can be grown on these types of land capability 4. So again, the land capability class 6, there are shallow soils on a steep slope used on grazing forestry, because these slopes are more than 15%. So there is a steep slopes are there. So where there is a steep slopes, the erosion is more if there is no vegetation cover. So normally these are the lands which are covered with shallow soil, maybe lateritic, maybe cannot be skeletal soils, but it certainly supports vegetation, and they are normally covered with forest lands. So 7 and 8, they are mostly the soil which are very high kind of a limitation, and these were either under very dense forest covers, or being most of the areas are under this wildlife and recreationals. Although there are plains, but within these high hill areas, there are valleys where these wildlife and recreational activities are going on. But at the high altitudes, they are mostly devoid of vegetations. Now coming to the land suitability. So land suitability in terms of the land capability, it is a fitness of a given type of land for a defined use. So land capability, basically the land which is capable for agriculture or for forestry or for grazing. But when we talked about suitability, it is the fitness of a given type of a land for a defined use. When we say defined use, means there that within a crop, there are n number of crops which cannot grow on a clay soil. There are n number of crops which are cannot be grown on skeletal soils. So these are the basically the suitability to with reference to its fitness, and with reference to its fitness when we talk, it concerns with the type of soil, with the terrain may be the geomorphology, like it may be paddy plain, the suitability will be different. For hilly areas, the suitability will be different. For pasture area, the suitability class will be different. Therefore, the process of land suitability classification is the appraisal of grouping of a specific area of land in terms of their suitability for defined uses. So use becomes more prominent when we talked about land suitability versus capability. Capability is slightly different, different in terms of whether a land is capable under use for agriculture, for forestry, and for wildlife, and for other purposes, maybe for urban developments. While suitability is the fitness of a given type of soil in a defined use. So land suitability may be defined into highly suitable lands, moderately suitable lands, and low suitability lands. So the land can be supported and infinitely and benefit justify inputs is highly suitable. So these lands, you can say basically the older floodplains of any river where the soil depth is more than meters and the soil is capable to produce any kind of food grains. Therefore, these are the areas where any kind of activities can be performed. Then we have a moderate suitability lands which has a limitation, either reduce productivity or increase the inputs, and indeed sustain productivity compared with those needed in high suitable lands. And then we have a low suitability land with a limitation so severe that benefits are reduced and the inputs needed to sustain productions are increased, so that this cost is only marginally justified. So again, basically these land suitability and land capability is inversely somewhere proportionate when we talked about the land suitability and land capability modeling. In most of the cases, normally when we say that the land is very low suitable, so when we say for low suitable, it is low suitable in terms of the defined use. So we cannot go for construction of a house in a very high altitudes where there is a very steep slope of more than 35%. So these are the basically a cut line between the land suitability and land capability. But when we talked about the suitability in GIS application, in GIS, basically what we do, the land capability application normally applies for the analysis of land use analysis. Land use analysis in terms of what we say, basically it is a type of different classes and its inherent characteristics with respect to its use. So when we talked about land use, so land, suppose if there are a slope area which is more than 5% slopes, and if the cultivations is going on, normally what we say that the it has agricultural land but with certain limitation, and these limitation will be either in terms of erosion, either in terms of soil thickness, either in terms of its productivity. So, and again the land use, when we say about the area like in Gujarat, Bhuj, Kuwait, you will find that most of the buildings were gone into the earth because of the lower strata being covered by sand. And this multi-story complex where the third floor becomes ground floor. So for the construction purpose, if certain structural engineering techniques were applied, this will not happen. So land use analysis normally depends that for what purpose you are going for analyzing the land use, whether it is for urban development, whether it is for social forestry, whether it is for the construction of road, whether it is construction of recreational areas and other things, like whether you go for the this network alignments of pipelines and all. So you have to go for the analysis. So analysis of land use normally, when we talked about land use is not a single component, which generally what we say that what is being seen is a land use. It is being controlled by certain factors like its geomorphology, like its geology, then the drainage pattern, then slope, then its morphology and all. Again, when we go for agriculture, the suitability application is entirely different. The suitability in terms of agriculture, we classify into whether the land is suitable for cropping, whether the land is suitable for grazing, whether the land is suitable for forestry, and whether the land is suitable for pasture and all. In planning purpose, normally the suitability being studied or being realized in a different sense, that most of the area which is normally not comes within the planning, we demarcate as a negative areas for planning, like pond. Pond is a negative area of planning, like social forestry areas, like areas under forest. These are the negative areas because the planning is restricted on these image. You can go for the buffer land development, like riverfront development, but on the river you cannot do any kind of a planning. So in planning, there is a one positive area for planning where you go for the urban development. There is a negative area of planning which will be used for the recreational, maybe forest development under social forestry scheme and all. But negative areas normally we eliminate while preparing a plan. Then we go for the natural resource development, or natural resource development is a slightly different area where broad categories of agriculture, forests, wastelands, and water bodies will come into picture. And then there is a subclass also. Within the agriculture, you will have a Kharif, you will have Rabi, you will have 3 cropping systems. You have agriculture plantations and all. And within forest, you will have a dense forest, then open forest, then forest without any canopy cover, and you have a degraded kind of a forest where which are near to the hamlets. Then natural resource management, basically it is the integration of all themes, because you cannot go for the management just considering a single theme of land use. You have to go for the land use land cover mapping. You have to prepare a geology map. You have to prepare a geomorphology map, and then the outcome of geology and geomorphology becomes the hydrogeomorphology map. Then you have to go for the natural natural drainage map. Then again, in conjunction with these thematic maps, you have to collect the entire socioeconomic data of the area under study, and then with by integrating the socio-economic profile and the thematic profile, you come with a certain conclusions. Then retail site selection, maybe site selections for go downs, maybe site selection for big industrial setups like special economic zones and all. So for certain areas, every kind of a deep study is required, which is not a single theme dependent analysis. It is a multi-theme analysis. And also for defense purpose, wildlife and crime analysis. Uh, these are the areas like wildlife. When we talked about the Asiatic lions rehabilitation near in Palpur Puno Sanctuary. So those studies you have to uh, undertake, taking all kinds of attributes and into picture, and then finally prepare a plan. Uh, Nowadays, even the election being conducted during GIS, when the entire planning is based on the number of polling stations, their kind of the kind of environment in terms of the criminal pictures or the criminal strength of the area under polling. And then you have to define the force deployments, migration of forces from one polling station, one polling area to other polling areas, or one constituency to other constituency. These are also possible. We did this kinds of exercise for election commission also, and every election the same exercise we have to carry out. Because the area being studied in terms of the new rules and regulations and type of movements based on the criminal records of the area, and the deployment of forces as per the area sensitivity. These areas can be analyzed using GIS and remote sensing. Now, as far as GIS remote sensing is concerned, this kind of a planning being done using 30 centimeter data, even using a few centimeter data, or using a drone data. So the kind of objective is to be defined by the objective of the study. Now you cannot go for the detailed site selection using a 30 centimeter data or 36 centimeter satellite data. It is to be dependent on the 50 centimeter data or a centimeter data of drone. So these are the different platforms where the expert is to be defined what kind of application to be done, or what kind of a result he want. For agriculture analysis, which is a regional kind of analysis, one can go for the 50,000 analysis, 1:50,000 scale, using 30 centimeter data or 36 centimeter data. Even for a larger region, but when you go for a zonal region, maybe a few square kilometer region, and you go for the agricultural planning, it comes down the drone data with a centimeter resolution. So normally two kinds of methods we used in GIS, that is analytical hierarchy approach, and it is a weighted overlay and the fuzzy overlay. The weighted overlay tool applies one of the most used approaches for overlay analysis to solve multi-criteria problems such as selection and suitability models. And the fuzzy overlay tools allow the analysis of the possibilities of a phenomena belonging to multiple sets in a multi-criteria overlay analysis. Not only fuzzy overlay determine what sets of phenomena is possibly a member of, or it's analyzed the relationship between the membership, the multipurpose sets. Now, basically, all these analytical approaches it's a multi-theme modeling, because you have to decide which kind of a model to be prepared for a certain application, for suitability and preparation of a model. Maybe one model with certain weightage may be used for one purpose, or may not be giving you the desired results as per your requirements. So again, the modeling is basically it's a kind of intelligence of a person for which he wants to apply the rules, and these rules basically maybe depends on the subcategory of a particular theme. Now, weighted overlay method is normally a method which is being weighted with respect to one class to another class. For the purpose of agriculture, we can say within the agriculture, if you want to give more weightage to Kharif lands, so these Kharif lands basically the single crop lands. I'm just going back to the different kind of a modeling, particularly for the large scale modeling. And when you go for a development of land use, you have to select an area which is under Kharif. Then the groundwater becomes more important because the land is under Kharif, it is under single crop, and you want to convert it into double crop depending upon the potentiality or the limitation of the land. Now, when we talk about the limitation of the land, that means there are certain limitations. Maybe the area is there is no there is no groundwater there. The limitation with respect to the poor aquifers. Then, even if there is a good drainage network and there is a possibility of constructing a stop dam or conservation of the water, then you can suggest for the area to be converted from Kharif land to the double crop lands. So this kind of a matrix is applied when you use the modeling for the larger area. But for urban land suitability model, now there is a weighted theme of total 100, and these are the different categories on one axis: land use, geomorphology, soil texture, transport buffer, and stream buffer, and then slope. So in each category, we have assigned the weighted. Theme weight is for land use, we given 25, geomorphology given 20, soil texture we given 5 because for urban development, texture and all is not very much important because of the structural engineering part. Even you can construct a very high-rise building where the soil is loomy or loomy skeletal or even the clay skeletal, because the structural part will be taken care by the structural engineering experts. So we have given less weightage. Then transport buffer and then stream buffer is 25 because either side of the stream, then there is a limitation of urban constructions, urban development. So the different weightage is being given, or 30 meter, 45 meter, 60 meters, like that. So weightage is also 30 meter, it is the lowest one, while in 60 meter buffer zone, we have given weightage higher, that is 3. So this kind of a matrix is to be developed, that which theme is more important for me. For urban development, because it is been the land use is the theme, which is one of the most important theme. So we have given maximum weightage to agricultural land. That means the agricultural land which may be shallow, which are under single crops, and which are near to the urban peripheries. Because you cannot go for an urban development kind of a suitability analysis just selecting the basics of land suitability modeling, because urban development, it is a continuous development. Even you cannot develop the urban areas into pockets depending upon the suitabilities ranking when you go for the modeling. So the continuity is one of the part, and that's why you have to select given more weightage where the continuity of the urban development is there, and the lands are also available. Normally, we consider that even if there are wastelands near the urban peripheries and the government lands also, we given more weightage. That's why the weight of 9 is given to wastelands. Forests, basically, these are the negative areas. That's why the weightage is very low. And the maximum weightage is given to wastelands and agricultural land. Built up land, basically, these are the lands which are under habitations. So it is a very less weightage. Then geomorphology also. If it is agriculture, and in geomorphology, the agriculture is going on in paddy plains, the higher weightage being given. The dissected hill and valleys, which is the lower weightage is given, and water body, it is normally the negative areas. So like this, we define the different weightages. On slope also, if it is nearly level, we give more weightage for urban development. Even the more weightage for the another kind of different application for land suitability modeling. But mostly before this, the entire basically the rules which apply for the urban development, because it is not a kind of a modeling which is being created by expert and just implement. There are certain rules of the within an act. So those rules applied on these layers, like buffering. If it is a highway of you can say express highways, so half a kilometer of area is under no construction zone. So half a kilometer of area can be eliminated using the transport buffers. So therefore, you have to give buffering where the rules apply according to the rules of defined in the act, and then the layer will be applicable for running a suitability model. So these kinds of weightages normally we apply, and the weightage apply and land suitability modeling, it depends that how much land is required for urban development. Now suppose we can say for per 5,000 population we required 1 hectare of land. So in the time frame of next 25 years, we have to take the growth pattern of population into consideration, and basically taking the growth pattern of the population into consideration, then we determine the land requirement maybe after 20 years. So these plans were prepared normally for 20 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years, depending upon the different ULB's regulations across the states. So you have to consider the population, then again the land requirement, then again the land classification for the purpose of urban development, for commercial area development, for the recreational development, and again the requirements of these areas for the in terms of the utility facilities and public utilities requirements and all. So you have to study all these things before running a model or before coming to a conclusion of model. Maybe this weightage may not satisfy your land requirement criteria. Then again you have to modify certain weightages, and again you have to run model, or you have to generate 2 or 3 different kinds of model giving different weightages to the major classes under consideration. And then you will have a land suitable for urban development, land suitable for recreational development. Likewise, you will have a total number of land, maybe 1,000 hectare of land, maybe 2,000 hectare of land, depending upon the projected population growth. Now I'm coming to a case study, because unless or until urban model is slightly complex, in terms of the person who are working at the institutional level and a person on a working in a government sectors and all, because in institutional level normally we apply the algorithms, but at a government level the algorithm as well as the rules both will combine to develop a development plan. So there is slightly difference when we prepare, when we go for a research work and when we go for a real kind of a development plan based on the land use modeling, based on land suitability modeling and all. Normally, these plans are legally statutory plans, and these are legal values. So when there is a legal things are come, and each inch, each centimeter of land becomes more important. So we have to work on a very high resolution satellite data, which is about 30 centimeter data or maybe 50 centimeter data. Normally, the smart city work is going on drone and 30 centimeter data, but development plan we prepare on 1:50 centimeter, 50 centimeter data, that is around 0.5 meters. So basically, this case study is the one example set for the formulation of GIS-based master plan in a digital environment. And this first model was demonstrated before the Ministry of Urban Development, because when Amrit was launched, most of the ULBs do not have experience of how to prepare a digital master plan, taking considering number of different kinds of themes for formulation of digital master plans under Amrit. So, because Madhya Pradesh is one of the major state where first digital plan of Indore being prepared in 2002. So the team which worked for Indore have generated the standards for how you can make a digital master plan, and this codification being done late in 2002. The same committee has been again called to generate the standards for Amrit digital based master plans in GIS, and these are the parameters which is very synchronized throughout the states. So it is being used for the urban land use map, and also being used for the taxation purpose at the Nagar Nigam levels and all. So basically the planning area of Omkareshwar, which is one of the most famous pilgrimage town of Madhya Pradesh, and one of the Jyotirling is also there in Omkareshwar. So the planning is slightly different because it is not a normal town. It is a very different kind of a town, and different kind of a town in terms that it has a very small area, only 12.75 square kilometer of planning area. So it is very small town, but it has a famous town with respect to its what you call its religious importance. So the planning is entirely different because we have to plan taking into consideration the tourist aspect of the town. And tourist aspect is this: then most of the time the peak areas like this full moon, and then Mahashivratri, and then other major religious melas, the migrated population is very high. It is high in terms because normal population is about 10,000 as per the 2000 census, but it goes more than lakhs when these festivals were celebrated over there. So the planning aspect is different. The town morphology and the town functioning is slightly different. So the planning is based on the objective of its origin. So therefore, the entire team being make up according to the objective sets for the Omkareshwar. So we have planners, we have architectures, we have the tourist experts, we have also taking the help of Madhya Pradesh tourism before going for the final planning. And this is the plan which has been accepted by the government under Amrit. So these planning, basically the plan preparation process is there are actually some 475 different kinds of layers. It is not possible to show all those layers here, but the major layer is about 28 layers, and there is a in 28 layers there are sub classifications, and very large number of sub classifications are there. So the base layer, basically it is a road, rail, bridges, flyover and water bodies. Then we have a urban land use layer, which is based on the building footprint. So each building you have to map, each building you use you have to define, and each building under which class it falls, whether it's a private building, whether it's a central government property, whether it's a state government property, whether it is commercial, whether it is non-commercial building, whether it's go down. So type of use is being defined for each building using very high resolution satellite data, but certainly the building use cannot be defined by the satellite data almost all the but the building use being defined taking the physical survey of each building. Then utility data basically water supply network, stormwater, sewage network, all these mapping has to be done. Then hypsography, basically it is a digital terrain model being generated using 5-meter contours. Then cadastral layers, which is the layer being used for the ownership of the land. And then socio-economic data, which is the population projection, what is the population today and what will be after 25 years. The different models we have run to understand the average population growth of the city. Then amenities and facilities, gap analysis, non-informal and previous non-conformity and previous master plan, spatial statistics analysis for development and requirement, urban land allocation based on URDPFI guidelines, and draft development plan for 2031. Non-conformity means the plan which was published previously, the development which is being taken after the publication of the previous, how much development being according to the plan and how much not as per the plan. So these calculations were taken into consideration while going for the different for the next plan. Now the base layer, I'll just showing you the base layers. These are the base layers, how it is acquired, the data source and all. So all kinds of, even the trees were mapped. So how many trees are there? They were mapped. How many community toilets are there? They were, everything is mapped. So the entire area, entire city, which have a different kind of urban land use has been mapped. There are certain layer which is point layer, there are polygon layer, and then there is a line layers like this utility hypsogram, hypsographic, cadastral boundaries, and hazards. Now the land use layer you will have. This is basically the Omkareshwar planning area has been surrounded the by the Narmada. Divide the area into two different parts. One is the north of the Narmada, which is Mandata, and south of the Narmada, it is basically Mandata is the Omkareshwar, and the south of the Narmada is basically the new development being going on. And the major area is under forest. So the land use map is prepared as per the standards, which showing you the all commercial, educational, green areas, health services, villages, and everything here in land use. And the area specific land uses, state government properties, traffic related, transport, vacant lands, and all. Then it's statistics we calculate basically based on this the land use classes, and these are statistics are basically used when you go for the land suitability modeling and all, because this give you certain indications that which category to be taken into consideration for the development purpose. Then we have a socio-economic analysis. This is based on the population density, SC/ST population, sex ratio, literacy rate, work participation rates, and all. So first, initially you have to generate a ward map. Ward map, basically the entire urban area is divided into one ward depending upon the population, for the better amenities and better facilities to be provided to the public. So that's why this is the unit where the local body is basically functioning, and the water supply, sewerage, storm water collections, and education and all being covered based on these units. And there are actually certain parameters which have been used for the assignments of certain facilities. Like for primary school, you have to have a population of more than 5,000 for one primary school. For public toilet, the walkable distance is not more than 500 meters, and it must serve more than a population of more than 1,000. So these are the indicators and index for development of utilities. Then you have a population density map which shows more population, and also giving the picture of the less populated, less densely populated wards.
सर उसका फिर क्या किए अभी कुछ नहीं किए। तो आप लंच में आप अपना पैन नंबर, वो यूएन नंबर, पासवर्ड और चेक की कॉपी मैडम की भेज दीजिए हमें व्हाट्सएप, तो हम उसको भेज के रात में करा देंगे।
Sorry for the interruption. And then you have a STSC population, because the government is more giving more facilities and also concern about the weaker sections. So you have to go for the population of these sections in different wards accordingly. Then the ward wise sex ratio, male versus female, which is the highest ward and which is the lowest ward. These are also usable for the Department of Health and all. Literacy percentage, which ward is more literate and which is less literate. So accordingly, all schemes to be introduced in these wards, for more awareness programs we are running to these wards. Then work participation rate in percentage, also in the different wards. Now you will see the maximum area participation rate is 34 to 37. Now if you compare this with land use, you will certainly find why it is like this. When you compare with other themes also, you will see this percentage of participation rate is more in one block or less in another block. Then population growth from 1961 to population this 2011. Now 2011 the population is something around 10,000, and 1961 it is already only to 1,000 plus population. So based on the different population growth analysis like arithmetic method, geometric method, ratio method, and incremental increase method, you have to assess the population growth by the year 2031. So sometimes there is an option to select any one method which is suited for the town, but in some cases when the result is not proper considering the previous population growth, you have to go for the average of all these five methods for the population growth analysis. Now the population projection for 2021 and 31 being calculated as per the different method, but in Omkareshwar we considered only the mean population of these all five methods. Take out the mean and for 21 and 31. So even in 31 the population is not growing more than 20,000 plus, or you can say 21,000 plus. So the major part of the city that the population is not being very much increased because the activities are limited, and the load of population is only because of the migrated population during peak seasons in Omkareshwar. Then facility in indices, it is actually composition of education, communication, drinking water, utilities, and medical facilities. So all these indices have certain index, and these planning index to be applied depending upon the growth of population. Now when you go for the gap analysis for these facilities, you will find the area where there is no facilities or where there is only few facilities but not as per the population of the particular ward. So you have to give another proposal for increase of facilities in the particular areas. Drinking water standards is also very much set up by the planning norms, that each person required 100 to 150. It varies from town to town, but normally it is required some 100 liter per person per day. So in a different kind of cities like metros or mega cities, it goes up to 150 liter per person per day. So before going for the projected facilities requirement, you have to assess the existing facilities and amenities within the town, and these are the facilities listed from 1 to 8, which is hotels, guest house, hospital, bus stands, parking, sewage treatment plant, water supply tanks, and landfill dump yards. So these facilities we are shown on the map, and their spatial distribution. Based on this, we go for the further urban land requirement analysis, depending on the physical growth of last 20 years and population projections for the next 20 years. So these are the two factors which is basically considered for the final development, preparing a final model for based on the land suitabilities and all. So this one is the urban sprawl. So as you have seen that already from 61 to 2011, the growth is almost double. So it takes about more than 50 years to double the populations. So that's why the area which is showing in different years from 2001, then again 2001 to 2010, then 2010 to 2018, likewise. So the mean population, which is going to be 2938 in 2031, the land requirement is in 2000 is 133.44 hectare, and 2031 it is 190.34%, 134 hectare during 2031. This is basically assumed based on the 110 persons per hectare, and density, the present density that was 107% per hectare. So considering the present population density and also taking the population projection into consideration, we put up 110% per hectare density for the required land in 2031. Now coming to the land suitability analysis, there is a layer. There are different kinds of layer you have to prepare for the land suitability analysis. One is the geomorphology, which gives you the terrain conditions, whether it's dissected, whether it is valley, whether it's paddy plain, whether it is rivers, or whether it's plateaus and all. Then you have to go for the soil texture analysis, whether it's loamy or loamy skelter or the present built-up area. It may be because here we have only two classes because the area is very small. But when you go for the large area, the number of classes will also increase. The soil classes also increase. You will have a loamy, you will have loamy skelter, you have clay skelter, you have stockrafts, you have ruintic soils and all. So those kinds of classification will increase when the area is increased. But when the topology is quietly similar, there is only one or two classes in soil. The slope basically defined into percent, not in degree. 0 to 3%, which is normally we classify as less than a degree. So likewise, the slope classes is defined to more than 25%, taking the digital elevation model and prepared using the AutoSet dam, and then further transform into 5-meter contour for the planning purpose. Then we have a road buffer classified into 100, 100, 200 and 200, 500, more than 500 meter. We have the major trunk roads, then when major circulation road, they have given the different kinds of a buffer, taking the importance into the road network in the town. So what we found basically, why the buffer area we define in a 100 buffer, 200 meter buffer, 500 meter buffer, and more than 500 meter buffer. So these buffers are important when we go for the final plan proposals. So which buffer area to be considered as a no development zone? These area also important at the time of suitability analysis. Then we have a drainage buffer also. We have 9-meter buffer, 18-meter buffer, 15-meter buffer, and 12-meter buffer. So this buffering is normally dependent type of drainage, whether it is a 6th order drainage, 5th order drainage, 4th order drainage, 2nd order, 3rd order, or 1st order drainage. 1st order drainage, normally the buffer is 3 meter, but these 1st order drainage is negligible in terms of planning. But when the slope is more, the first order drainage becomes more important. But when the slope is less, the first order drainage is very less important. In slope area, because the entire runoff moves through these first order drainage or within a major water bodies like Bada Talab and the first order drainage, because the network of first order drainage forms the second order, the network of second order drainage forms the third order, and the network of third order drainage will form the fourth order. So this is this kind of a hierarchy is there. But certainly when we decide a buffer for your suitability selection, the slope becomes a more important parameter while selecting a drainage buffer. Then negative areas of development. I have told you earlier that there are negative areas like forest. If you see the land use map, because within the notified forest area, no development activity being permissible. The act itself define you that restrict you that the area from where the forest is starting, you cannot go for any kind of a proposal, because in certain areas which are under you can say the biodiversities or wildlife sanctuaries are there. There is no cutting allowed in these kinds of forests. These are naturally growing forests, and only conservation activities being allowed. But in planning, you cannot touch the forest areas, particularly when you go for the urban kind of a development. But if you go for a wildlife development or wildlife suitability models like Asiatic lions and all, so you have to consider this forest becomes your positive area, and the areas which are out of forest becomes your negative areas for planning. So vice versa, it is been depending upon the type of applications. Existing transport and gap areas. So the existing transport and gap areas, basically the existing road network being taken into consideration. The gap area is where there are settlements, but there is no connectivity by any kind of road network. So those are the areas which we call as gap areas, which are not connected by the roads. Now, in case of Omkareshwar, we developed different kind of a suitability model, giving weightage to the different themes. And as I told you earlier, that these weights depends upon the requirement of land satisfied by a particular model. So here in case we develop different models, model 1, model 2, model 3, and finally we have to opt a model which is satisfied your land requirements. So as per this Omkareshwar model number 1, again the same scenario is there. I have told you earlier, I'm not going to repeat it. But in model 1, what is the scenario? Basically, highly suitable land is 147 hectare. The less suitable land, which is 11.13, showing in the different blue color, and these are the different highly suitable lands you will see here also, and not suitable, which is covered under forest. So if you see the grand total, it is something around 127.516 hectare. So we have a high 12% high suitable land, 1% is less suitable land, and 7% is moderate suitable land. So you totally what we get is something around 19% land suitable for the urban development. Now again, the model 2 is a different kind of a weightage, but in model 2 and model 1, if you see, the same weightage was given to agriculture and wasteland. Here also the same weightage was given to agriculture because these two type of land uses are more important for the development. That's why in model 2 also these two layers were considered as one of the highest weighted layer. But the weight changes into different layers. You see the soil texture, you see the transport buffer and steam buffer. So in steam buffer and transport buffers, the weightage changes. Again, the geomorphology we have given the in 20 theme weight, or here we given only 10 weight. In soil texture it is almost same, but in transport buffer it becomes 20. So in transport buffer model 1, the weight was given 10. Now as far as the urban development is concerned, where once the road is constructed, you will see the development is automatically taking place. In most of the areas, even if bypass has been constructed, the bypass is surrounded by the agriculture land, but gradually the development is taking place. And once this bypass or ring road being developed, then you have to again plan for another ring road. So again the area will develop, and accordingly in phases you have to assign the different kinds of ring roads. And these ring roads later on becomes a part of urban arteries, and in futures you have to propose different ring roads for the proper developments. So again you will have in model 2 total land which is suitable is something around 1275.16 in but the highly suitable land percentage increases. This increases because of the higher weightage to transport, and less suitable land is also increases to 20.7 hectare. So again you will have something around 21% of land which can be used for urban development. So these are the basically areas where you have to prepare the land suitability model based on the weighted index method, and it is basically weightage. It can further be analyzed using the sub themes of the major theme, like we are giving the more weightage to a particular theme versus less weightage. So on axis you have a weightage, maybe one layer will be equally important to other, maybe one layer is more important to the other, or maybe one layer is less important with respect to the other. So there are some success stories of Madhya Pradesh where piped water schemes of Ratlam district being planned on GIS and remote sensing based studies, and these are basically planning is basically again it is based on the land suitability, land capabilities analysis, and in conjunction with the other themes you have to study the entire terrain and then finally mark the area under your objective. Then for rooftop solar energy, this kind of a study can be take up because in Amrit you will have a roof area. So you take the roof area into consideration. You can generate the 3D building rooftops and simulation, sun emulations and all estimations you can take up into consideration, and then finally calculate the total number of volume been where the rainwater can be harvested. This solar energy can be used for taking the rooftops available for solar installations. The same can be applied for this rainwater harvesting also in a similar way by taking into the rain gauge station modeling. Number one, the area taking how much rain means the city or the area. City is divided into different kinds of rain zones. So where there is a more range, where there is a less range, and what is the total size of a roof, which out of a one area, how much roof is available, because some of the roof will be occupied by the solar plants, maybe for other activity, but some roofs are available for rainwater harvesting. Also going for uh, number of space available on roofs for various other activities under different government schemes. So these further analysis is possible using this data, high resolution data. Then we have some sustainable enabling town planners for master plan formulation. And basically these plans were generated on 1:4,000. 1:4,000 because the cadastral maps are available on 1:4,000, and then land ownership is available on the cadastral. There is linked with land ownership. So these cadastrals become more important when you go for the urban cadastral mapping. So within the cadastral, when you divide the number of buildings falling in one cadastral plot, it will have different kind of a ID you can generate to generate an urban cadastral map. Normally we are doing for the Chandwara town, where we are assigning something around 23 character code to urban properties, and then further this will be clipped to the cadastral to provide the ownership of land to the citizens. So these are the different kinds of success stories, basically done on the land suitability models. And although by studying land suitability model, you can preserve certain lands for recreational. In normal cases, it is not possible because satellite data permits us to identify the weaker zones, to identify the potential zones, to identify the most suitable zones for urban development. For example, if it is the area which is very excellent for groundwater, but in absence of these maps, you can develop the buildings over these excellent groundwater zones. But if you have these kinds of different themes with you, certainly you can assign for the recreational areas, so then the rainwater will be percolated downward. So this is the advantage when we preparing land use modeling, land suitability modelings, agriculture modeling, maybe hazard modeling, maybe flood zone modeling. So all kinds of modeling is possible if you have a different kinds of data with respect to its socioeconomic condition, with respect to its physical condition, with respect to its environmental conditions, with respect to the natural conditions. And by overlaying all these things in conjunction with the other important themes, you will have to have a one, you can say, composite land development unit, because one land development unit will give you the total information of a particular cell size. The cell size again depends upon the scale on which you are working, but normally it gives you the the land conditions within that cell size, what is the geomorphology, what is the geology, what is the drainage condition, what is the soil capability class, what is the soil suitability class, what is the soil erosion class, then what is the soil texture, what is the land use over there. So these all conditions can be possibly helpful to prepare a land composite unit map, and then you have to generalize all those land composite units into a for a recommendations as per the objective of the study. So I am just finishing my lecture here itself. If you have some questions, or you can ask me.
Thank you, sir. Very well explained. Each and every themes, how it was prepared, what criteria was used. Thank you for an enlightening presentation. I request you all participants, that you have a great opportunity to connect with Dr. Vivek Kadare, sir. He has experience of preparation of so many development plans. After this became mandatory that we should have GIS included development plans. So his contribution is instrumental in various development plans. So I request you all to please have an interactive session. If you have any doubts, please you can get it cleared over here. Kataris.
If you have any doubt, you can ask me. If somebody wants to work with me, he can work with me, and I'll just welcome all newcomers, because this is the area where a lot of things are going on. We are also thinking for the 3D master plans, and now we are going for the drone-based master plans for cities, more than 76 towns of Madhya Pradesh, with drone-based images. So there is a lot of opportunities. I always welcome newcomers to my institutions, because this is the area where everyone can work, and in the areas of urban planning, because still we don't have a human resource in this area, particularly urban plannings, particularly in utility and facilities planning, because in most examples of IFC, that private players are there, but they don't have an experience over working on these kinds of specified areas, and like non-penetrating radar for assessment of the underground utilities. It is one of the major areas where students can participate, even today or maybe in the coming future. Then we are also thinking to map the city in terms of all kinds of its amenities, facilities, and infrastructure. So today also we have in Bhopal, we have all kinds of these bus stops, we have cell towers, we have ATM points and all, but because of limitations, it is not in the public portal. So the young one can have an opportunity to come forward and develop some good softwares in the public domain, can be used for the betterment of our public utilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a great opportunity. I'm sure our students, our scholars would love to work with you, and with the institute. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Next, in our sessions, second section, we will have our hands-on tutorial on land suitability analysis. We will have a break of 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and we will join again. Can we join at 2 o'clock if it is? Oh, there is a question. Is there a question answers now? Yes, Shobna, do you want to ask any question? Sir is.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, I have put a message in the in a question in the chat box.
You can ask.
Sir is there?
Yes, sir is there. Dr. Katare?
Yeah, madam.
Yes. Hi, sir. Sir, it was a very informative session, so thank you so much. Sir, from the many applications you told, sir, one was one was about the 3D extraction of buildings from the building footprint.
Yeah.
So could you please elaborate the process for it and you have told about one application as in solar, rooftop solar energy generation. What
Yeah.
other applications is it being currently used for, sir?
Currently, basically, we are working not on the rooftop because there are different departments which are working on a different kinds of study. So this basically initially we take a sample kind of a study, and then we just spread over to the different areas. So basically the rooftop studies being done using the 3D building footprint analysis, and presently the 3D data cost is very high, and that's why we are working into a very small clusters. Still, as far as Madhya Pradesh is concerned, we are generating the 3D maps for smaller areas only. But as far as software is concerned, presently the limitation is there to extract these kinds of 3D building. But this ArcGIS, there is a model on that basis we go for the demarcation of 3D buildings. It's not very difficult. If you have a problem, you can come over there. You can work over here, because this very high resolution data we won't permit it to share with any institution because of the legal problems. But as far as the new map policy is coming up, it can be shared with the educational institutes and all. So in Omkareshwar also we generate a 3D model. I've not shown because I've just stick to my topic, but here also we generated a 3D model for the Omkareshwar.
Sir, so the 3D model is being generated manually using the GIS software, or is there some
No, not manually. It is based on software. For
Sure.
3D, actually, you have to have an ortho product with Z values. That's all.
Okay.
Yes, you should have height values, Z value. And then we, if possible, in the tutorial second session, we will show you how we can do it in ArcGIS, ArcScene.
Yeah.
So Dayaram will be joining us in the session 2, and he will show you how we can do a 3D generation of the area of the buildings.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am.